Imagine a world where honor means everything, and a single sword can change history. Welcome to the world of the samurai, Japan's legendary warriors who lived by a strict code of honor called bushido. These fearless fighters were more than just soldiers. They were also poets, philosophers, and master strategists. Picture them in shining armor, wielding their katanas with incredible skill. Their stories are filled with bravery, loyalty, and unbreakable spirit. Join us on an exciting journey through the rise of these noble warriors, their thrilling battles, and their lasting impact on Japan. From the chaos of the Warring States period to the peaceful Edo era, we'll uncover the secrets of the samurai's enduring legacy. Get ready to be amazed by the true stories of these iconic heroes. The adventure into the world of the samurai begins now. Who were these esteemed warriors? Samurai, the hereditary military nobility and officer class, played a significant role in medieval and early modern Japan from the late 12th century until their abolition in the late 1870s during the Meiji era. They were the well-compensated retainers of prominent feudal landholders, enjoying high prestige and special privileges. A 1629 law mandated that samurai on official duty practiced daisho, carrying two swords. They also had the right to kill those of a lower class under specific circumstances. Some key samurai and historical figures promoted the belief that all samurai engaged in combat using bushido codes of martial virtues and adhered to cultural ideals regarding samurai behavior. While earlier military and administrative officers served as their forerunners, the samurai truly emerged during the Kamakura shogunate, which ruled from 1185 to 1333. They rose to become the ruling political class, wielding significant power and responsibility. In the 13th century, samurai demonstrated their prowess as warriors against the Mongol invaders. During the peaceful Edo period, from 1603 to 1868, they transitioned into stewards and chamberlains of daimyo estates, acquiring managerial skills and education. By the 1870s, samurai families made up 5% of the population. As modern militaries developed in the 19th century, the samurai became increasingly obsolete and costly to maintain compared to the average conscript soldier. The Meiji Restoration abolished their feudal roles, leading many samurai to enter professional and entrepreneurial fields. Nonetheless, their legacy and weaponry remain deeply ingrained in Japanese popular culture. In historical Japanese context, warriors are commonly referred to as bushi, meaning warrior, or byuke, which translates to military family. The noun form of the verb saburai is where the term samurai, which originally meant those who serve in close attendance to the nobility, originated. Today, bushi is frequently used interchangeably with samurai. However, historical texts clarify that bushi and samurai represented different concepts. Bushi were generally soldiers or warriors, while samurai denoted a type of hereditary nobility. The term samurai has become synonymous with the middle and upper tiers of the warrior class. Typically aligned with a clan and their lord, these warriors were trained as officers, skilled in military tactics and strategic planning. The terms samurai and bushi have evolved over various historical periods. During the Heian period, bushi were individuals who earned their livelihood through armed combat. Within this group, the high-ranking bushi who served the emperor, the imperial family, and the nobility were known as samurai. In the Kamakura period, the role of the samurai expanded and became equivalent to gokenin, which denotes bushi who owned land and pledged service to the shogun. However, a distinct class of high-status samurai, known as high gokenin, existed independently and did not serve under the shogun. Lower-ranking bushi, serving under these samurai, were referred to as roju or rodo. The early Edo period saw further distinctions. Hatamoto, bushi, who could directly interact with the shogun, were recognized as samurai. This was a shift from the Kamakura period, where gokenin represented lower-status bushi, who lacked the privilege to meet with the shogun. During this time, most bushi served either the shogun or the daimyo, governing various domains. The lines between bushi and ordinary townspeople or peasants became more defined, leading to a blurring in the distinctions between samurai and bushi. Since the Meiji era, the terms samurai and bushi have been used interchangeably. After the demise of Prince Shotoku and the defeat of the Soga clan, Japan experienced widespread reforms. Among the most significant was the Taika reform, initiated by Emperor Kotoku in 645. This reform allowed the Japanese aristocracy to embrace the political structure, bureaucracy, culture, religion, and philosophy of the Tang dynasty. As part of the Taiho Code, established in 702, the population was required to register for a census that laid the groundwork for national conscription. Under a new law introduced by Emperor Monmu, 1 in every 3 to 4 adult males was drafted into the national military. These conscripts provided their own weapons and were in turn exempted from duties and taxes. This initiative marked one of the first efforts by the imperial government to create an organized army inspired by the Chinese model, later referred to by historians as Gundan Sei, though its existence was brief. The Taiho Code also organized imperial bureaucrats into 12 ranks, each with 2 sub-ranks, with the first rank being the highest advisors to the emperor. Those in the 6th rank and below were called samurai, dealing with everyday administrative tasks as civilian public servants. This usage aligns with the term's origin from saburao, meaning to serve. However, it would be centuries before samurai referred to military personnel. In the late 8th and early 9th centuries during the early Heian period, Emperor Kanmu aimed to solidify and extend his dominion in northern Honshu, engaging in military campaigns against the emishi who opposed the rule of the Kyoto-based imperial court. Emperor Kanmu introduced the title of shogun and began to depend on powerful regional clans to subdue the emishi. These clan warriors, adept in mounted combat and archery, became the favored force of the emperor for quelling uprisings, with Sakanui no Tamuramaro becoming notably prominent. Although this period marked the first known use of the title shogun, it remained a temporary title without political significance until the 13th century, being viewed merely as a military unit under the imperial court's command. Following these campaigns, Emperor Kanmu disbanded his army, leading to a gradual decline in imperial power. While the emperor maintained titular control, influential clans near Kyoto started filling high governmental roles, and their kin purchased magistrate positions. These magistrates often levied heavy taxes to repay debts, causing many farmers to lose their land. Through strategic marriages and protective pacts, these aristocrats accumulated significant political influence, eventually overshadowing the traditional aristocracy. Initially, some clans had formed from farmers arming themselves against imperial magistrates tasked with tax collection and land governance. These clans allied for mutual protection against more dominant groups. Taira no Masakado, a pivotal figure in the early 10th century, was the first from the local warrior class to rebel against the imperial court. Initially serving an emperor in his youth, Masakado later ascended within the Taira clan to become a regional power. In 939, when Fujiwara no Haruaki, a notorious figure from Hitachi province, sought refuge with Masakado, an imperial official demanded his extradition. Masakado's refusal sparked a conflict with Fujiwara no Korechika, positioning him against the imperial court. Declaring the Kanto region under his control as independent, Masakado proclaimed himself Shino, or new emperor. The imperial court retaliated by sending a large force under Taira no Sadamori, culminating in Masakado's death in battle in February 940. Masakado is revered today as one of Japan's 3 great vengeful spirits. During this period, distinctive Japanese armor and weapons like the tachi, long sword, and naginata, halberd, emerged, used predominantly in close combat by high-ranking samurai who were also equipped with yumi, bows. The Heian period saw shoguns with minimal political influence, as the imperial court controlled political matters. From the mid-9th century to the mid-11th century, the Fujiwara clan held sway over politics, excluding other clans from power and monopolizing high court positions. This changed in the mid-11th century when Emperor Go-Sanjo undermined their influence by taking an active role in governance. His successor, Emperor Shirakawa, further diminished their power by abdicating yet continuing to rule as a cloistered emperor, marking the end of the Fujiwara dominance. During the rule of emperors Shirakawa and Toba, the Taira clan emerged as regional overseers, amassing wealth and acquiring samurai from various areas as their retainers. Amidst the succession conflict between Emperor Toba's sons, Emperor Sutoku and Emperor Go Shirakawa, the Hogan Rebellion unfolded. Emperor Go-Shirakawa, allied with Taira no Kiyomori and Minamoto no Yoshitomo, claimed victory in this conflict. Subsequently, Taira no Kiyomori triumphed over Minamoto no Yoshitomo during the Heiji Rebellion, marking the ascent of the first samurai to join the aristocratic elite. Eventually, Kiyomori reached the pinnacle of the aristocracy, and his clan secured key roles at the imperial court, wielding significant influence. As a victor, Kiyomori became an imperial advisor and was the inaugural warrior to achieve such a stature, ultimately dominating the central government and reducing the emperor to a ceremonial role, with the Taira clan's women marrying into the imperial family to consolidate power. However, Taira no Kiyomori's decision to promote his daughter's child triggered widespread dissent. Prince Mochihito, excluded from the imperial succession, rallied the Minamoto clan to combat the Taira, igniting the Genpei War. During this conflict, Minamoto no Yoshinaka ousted the Taira from Kyoto. Initially supported by the secluded emperor, Yoshinaka later found himself alienated and isolated due to his troops' unruly conduct and his scant political authority. He executed a coup, took control from the emperor's retinue, and became the first Minamoto to be declared shogun. In retaliation, Minamoto no Yoritomo dispatched forces to eliminate Yoshinaka, who met his demise a year after his appointment as shogun. The Taira were ultimately vanquished in the Battle of Dan no Ura in 1185, ushering in the era of Minamoto rule. Minamoto no Yoritomo's victory established the dominance of the samurai over the traditional aristocracy. By 1185, Yoritomo had secured the right to appoint military governors and was authorized to organize soldiers, police, and to collect taxes. Initially, these governors were tasked solely with quelling rebels and gathering military provisions, without the authority to interfere with the duties of kokushi officials. Over time, however, their responsibilities broadened significantly, cementing the samurai class as the political rulers of Japan. In 1190, Yoritomo visited Kyoto, and by 1192, he had been appointed shogun, thereby founding the Kamakura shogunate. Rather than governing from Kyoto, he chose Kamakura, closer to his power base, as the seat of his government. The Kamakura period marked the ascendancy of the samurai under shogunal rule, tasked with securing the estates and epitomizing the ideal warrior and citizen. Initially employed by the emperor and non-military nobility, these warrior nobles eventually garnered sufficient manpower, resources, and political support through alliances to form the first samurai-led government. Power during this era often resided with regional clans, whose leaders were usually distantly related to the emperor and often members of the Fujiwara, Minamoto, or Taira families. From the Kamakura period forward, there was a strong emphasis on training samurai from childhood in archery and swordsmanship. By the late Kamakura period, even the most senior samurai donned chest armor, moving away from the heavy and elaborate armor of earlier times. Previously, protection was mostly limited to the body, but now, higher-ranking samurai also wore helmets and shoulder guards. A simpler style of armor, protecting only the front torso and sides of the abdomen, was introduced for lower-ranked samurai. During this period, samurai clans frequently competed for dominance. Zen Buddhism gained popularity among the samurai in the 13th century, influencing their ethical standards, particularly in mastering the fear of death and the act of killing. Meanwhile, among the broader populace, Pure Land Buddhism was more prevalent. In 1274, the Mongol-led Yuan dynasty of China launched an invasion against Japan with a formidable force of around 40,000 troops and 900 ships, targeting the northern regions. Japan countered with approximately 10,000 samurai. The invasion was hampered by severe thunderstorms that inflicted heavy losses on the invaders, ultimately aiding the Japanese defense. This invasion marked the first recorded use of bombs and gunpowder in Japan. In anticipation of another Mongol invasion, Japanese defenders began constructing a massive stone wall around Hakata Bay in 1276. Completed in 1277, this 20-kilometer barrier fortified the bay's perimeter and served as a robust defensive structure against further Mongol attempts. Despite diplomatic efforts by the Mongols between 1275 and 1279 to resolve hostilities, each envoy sent to Japan was executed. In the build-up to the Second Mongolian invasion, Kublai Khan sent multiple diplomatic missions to Japan. In September 1275, the regent of the Kamakura shogunate ordered the execution of 5 Mongolian diplomats in Kamakura, where their graves can still be found today. On July 29, 1279, another group of 5 emissaries from the Mongol Empire met the same fate. This time in Hakata, these acts of defiance against the Mongol emperor paved the way for one of the most storied conflicts in Japanese history. By 1281, the Yuan Empire had assembled a formidable force of 140,000 troops and 5,000 ships for another attempt to invade Japan. Positioned in northern Kyushu, a Japanese force of 40,000 stood in defense. The Mongol forces were preparing to disembark when a powerful typhoon struck the island, devastating the invaders and complemented by the robust defense at Hakata Bay, leading to another Mongol defeat. The storms of 1274 and the typhoon of 1281 played crucial roles in the samurai's successful defense against the Mongol invasions. Despite their numerical disadvantage, these natural events were regarded as kamikaze, or divine winds, reinforcing the belief among the Japanese that their homeland was protected by divine forces. During these tumultuous times, the art of Japanese swordsmithing evolved significantly, employing techniques of laminating or layering steel that had historical roots dating back over 2,000 years in the Mediterranean and Europe. This method involved forging blades with a hard, sharp edge supported by a softer, more flexible spine, achieving a balance of sharpness and durability. The craftsmanship reached its zenith in the 14th century with the legendary swordsmith Masamune. Japanese swords, particularly the tachi and katana, gained international acclaim for their exceptional sharpness and resilience. In 1336, Ashikaga Takauji, alongside Emperor Kogon, founded the Ashikaga shogunate. This marked the beginning of the Nanboku-cho period, where the northern and southern courts existed simultaneously, also signaling the onset of the Muromachi period. The northern court, consisting of 6 emperors, eventually merged with the southern court in 1392 under Ashikaga's initiative, though the modern imperial household agency regards the southern court as the rightful lineage. The Ashikaga shogunate maintained de facto control over Japan until the outbreak of the Onin War in 1467. During the Nanboku-cho period, the Ashikaga shogunate enhanced the powers of regional governors, granting them authority over land disputes and entitlement to half of the tax revenues from their territories. This newfound wealth was shared with the local samurai, establishing a tiered system of loyalty and support between the governors and the samurai ranks. Swordsmithing innovations from the late Kamakura period continued, leading to the development of tougher Japanese swords. The Nanboku-cho period saw the peak usage of odachi, large swords ideal for samurai warfare. Prior to the Mongol invasions during the late Kamakura period, battles were predominantly fought by small groups of horseback archers, with close combat being secondary. From the Nanboku-cho to the Muromachi periods, large-scale infantry engagements became more prevalent, elevating the importance of melee combat. During this era, many lower-class foot soldiers, known as ashigaru, started to play significant roles in battles. The popularity of haramaki, a type of chest armor, grew during these periods, with high-ranking samurai adopting this armor along with additional protective gear, such as helmets, face armor, and gauntlets. The onset of the Onin War in 1467, which endured for a decade, left Kyoto in ruins and significantly diminished the influence of the Ashikaga shogunate. This turmoil ushered in the Sengoku period, or Warring States period, corresponding to the late Muromachi era. This time was characterized by extensive civil wars as feudal lords, or daimyo, from various regions contended for dominance. The period is notable for the emergence of powerful feudal lords known as Sengoku daimyo, who governed independently of the shogunate's dwindling authority. During this era, the traditional bonds between lords and their vassals disintegrated, leading to frequent internal strife within clans and rebellions by subordinate families. Such conflicts occasionally allowed samurai to ascend to the status of Sengoku daimyo, with Hojo Soun being a prime example of a samurai achieving this rank. The Sengoku period also saw a dilution of strict samurai culture, allowing individuals from various social backgrounds to rise as warriors and effectively become samurai. A prominent figure in this trend was Toyotomi Hideyoshi, who advanced from peasant origins to achieve the ranks of samurai, feudal lord, and imperial regent. As warfare evolved, the role of foot soldiers, known as Ashigaru, recruited from the peasantry, became increasingly crucial. Their prominence grew especially after the introduction of matchlocks in 1543 by the Portuguese. These firearms, quickly adapted and refined by Japanese smiths, were named Tanegashima, after the island where they were first introduced. By the Sengoku period's conclusion, Japan possessed a formidable arsenal, with hundreds of thousands of these firearms and nearly 100,000 men in arms. On the battlefields, formations of Ashigaru wielding spears and Tanegashima became standard, with these weapons dominating combat scenarios. This period also marked significant advancements in armor, with the development of Tosei Gusoku, or modern armor, which featured fewer components and more functional designs compared to earlier armor styles. As the Sengoku period drew to a close, the relationships between lords and their military vassals solidified, reflecting Confucian principles that had permeated Japanese society since the 7th to 9th centuries. These vassals, who often controlled land, pledged allegiance to their lords or the shogun during the Edo period, receiving land, money, and other benefits in return for their military service. This system formalized the roles and rewards within the feudal hierarchy, defining the social structure of the time. Oda Nobunaga, a prominent lord from the Nagoya region and a quintessential samurai of the Sengoku period, nearly achieved the reunification of Japan, paving the way for future leaders to establish a new shogunate. Known for his innovative approaches in organization and military tactics, Nobunaga heavily utilized arquebuses, fostered commerce and industry, and valued innovative ideas. His series of victories led to the downfall of the Ashikaga Bakufu and the disarming of the Buddhist monks' militant factions, which had long plagued the ruling classes and fueled pointless conflicts among the people. These monks, often operating from their temple strongholds, were a perennial challenge to any ruler, including the emperor. Nobunaga's life ended in 1582 when he was betrayed by one of his own generals. Following Nobunaga, his devoted followers, Toyotomi Hideyoshi and Tokugawa Ieyasu, who later established the Tokugawa shogunate, continued his legacy. Hideyoshi, who rose from peasant origins to become one of Nobunaga's chief generals, quickly defeated the rebellious general and was seen as Nobunaga's rightful heir by avenging this act of betrayal. Both Hideyoshi and Ieyasu capitalized on Nobunaga's groundwork to further unify Japan. Toyotomi Hideyoshi, appointed as the Grand Minister in 1586, implemented a pivotal law prohibiting non-samurai from bearing arms, thereby solidifying the samurai status as both hereditary and exclusive. This effectively halted social mobility in Japan, a standard that remained until the Edo shogunate was dismantled by the Meiji Restoration. Previously, during the 16th century, the line between samurai and non-samurai had been indistinct. Most adult males, including minor farmers, were part of some military group and participated in conflicts during and before Hideyoshi's governance. This period was marked by widespread conflict, described as an all-against-all scenario that lasted a century. In the 17th century, the officially recognized samurai families were those aligned with Nobunaga, Hideyoshi, and Ieyasu. Throughout these regime changes, large battles took place, leading many defeated samurai to either become ronin, destroyed, or assimilated into the broader society. In 1592 and again in 1597, under Toyotomi Hideyoshi's ambitious plans to conquer China via Korea, a formidable force comprising 160,000 samurai and peasants was sent to Korea, marking one of the grandest military campaigns in East Asia. Leveraging their expertise with arquebuses and the extensive combat experience garnered during the Sengoku period, the Japanese forces achieved significant advances across much of Korea. Notable among the samurai generals were Kato Kiyomasa, Konishi Yukinaga, and Shimazu Yoshihiro. Kato Kiyomasa pushed his forces into the Orankai region on the northeast frontier of Korea, making incursions into northern China. However, facing fierce counterattacks by the Jurchens, whose fortresses were under siege, Kiyomasa's troops retreated to Korea. Shimazu Yoshihiro commanding a force of 7,000 samurai and vastly outnumbered, triumphed over the combined Ming and Korean troops at the 1598 Battle of Sachon, earning him the moniker Oni Shimazu or Shimazu the Ogre, a name that resonated throughout Korea and China. Despite the initial superiority of the Japanese on land, both campaigns floundered following Hideyoshi's death, leaving Korea in ruins. Several factors contributed to the failure: Korean naval dominance, substantial Ming troop deployments to Korea, effective Korean guerrilla warfare, diminishing Japanese resolve as the conflict persisted, and a general underestimation of the enemy's resilience by the Japanese commanders. In the 1592 offensive, Korean land defenses were quickly overwhelmed, being unprepared and poorly equipped compared to the seasoned and well-armed Japanese soldiers. However, during the 1597 invasion, the Korean and Ming defenses were considerably more fortified. With ongoing support from their superior navy, they managed to confine Japanese advances to the southeastern regions of Korea. The campaigns ultimately ceased with Hideyoshi's death in late 1598, leading to the withdrawal of Japanese troops as directed by the Council of Five Elders, which Hideyoshi had established to manage the succession to his son, Hideyori. Before his death, Hideyoshi arranged for Japan to be governed by a council of 5 elders, comprising the 5 most powerful feudal lords and Hideyoshi's own 5 retainers, until his sole heir, the 5-year-old Toyotomi Hideyori, came of age at 16. However, the reliance on young Hideyori as the sole successor weakened the Toyotomi leadership. Today, it's widely believed that the lack of adult heirs was a primary factor in the fall of the Toyotomi clan. Tragically, Hideyoshi's younger brother, Toyotomi Hidanaga, who had been a key supporter and strategist in Hideyoshi's ascent, had passed away in 1591. Additionally, Hideyoshi's nephew and only adult heir, Toyotomi Hidetsugu, was compelled to commit seppuku in 1595, along with several other vassals, under accusations of plotting a rebellion. This precarious political climate eventually led to the pivotal Battle of Sekigahara. At this battle, the Eastern Army, commanded by Ieyasu, overcame the Western Army, positioning Ieyasu on the brink of consolidating control over Japan. During this period of transformation, social mobility was remarkably high as the old order crumbled, and rising samurai strove to build and manage extensive military and administrative structures within their territories. Many of the samurai families that persisted into the 19th century trace their origins to this time, often claiming descent from one of the 4 ancient noble clans. Following the Battle of Sekigahara and the defeat of the Toyotomi clan, the Tokugawa shogunate heralded an era of peace, effectively ending the long period of warfare. During this time, samurai transitioned from warriors to courtiers, bureaucrats, and administrators. As the 17th century progressed, the samurai's role as military combatants dwindled throughout the Tokugawa period. By the closure of the Tokugawa era, samurai had evolved into aristocratic bureaucrats serving the daimyos. The samurai's paired swords, the katana and wakizashi, became symbolic representations of authority rather than practical tools of war, although they retained the right to execute any commoner who failed to show proper respect. The frequency of this practice is not well documented. Additionally, government mandates to reduce military sizes led to a rise in the number of unemployed ronin, creating social issues. The relationship between a samurai and his lord, typically a daimyo, grew more complex from the Genpei era through to the Edo era, heavily influenced by Confucian and Mencian philosophies, essential studies for the educated samurai. Samurai conduct became a model for other social classes, and with abundant leisure time, many samurai engaged in scholarly pursuits. Post-Edo period, this cultural influence expanded across all societal classes. While monks were sometimes consulted as advisors by the shogunate, the nobility remained largely excluded from governance, paving the way for samurai to dominate both military and civilian administrative roles. Notably, individuals recognized for non-martial talents such as literature and scholarship were also granted samurai status. In the Edo period, such samurai, equivalent to civil servants and administrative officers, were referred to as officials and honored with the title Obuke-sama. In the late 1500s, trade between Japan and Southeast Asia surged, particularly after the establishment of the Tokugawa shogunate in the early 1600s. The Red Seal ships, designated for this trade, sailed to destinations including Thailand, the Philippines, Vietnam, and Cambodia. Many Japanese, including samurai and ronin, who were masterless after the Battle of Sekigahara, settled in Southeast Asia, forming Japanese enclaves there. In the Philippines, the Spaniards recognized the martial prowess of these samurai and enlisted them as mercenaries. Among these, Yamada Nagamasa stood out, originally starting his career as a palanquin bearer, a position at the lower spectrum of the samurai hierarchy. He ascended to considerable heights in the Ayutthaya kingdom of present-day southern Thailand, eventually becoming the governor of Nakhon Si Thammarat Kingdom. In 1582, 3 Japanese lords dispatched a delegation comprising their kin and retainers to Europe, marking Japan's inaugural diplomatic mission to the continent. They were granted audiences with King Philip II of Spain and both Pope Gregory XIII and Pope Sixtus V. The mission returned to Japan in 1590, but upon their return, they faced harsh repercussions from the Tokugawa shogunate's anti-Christian policies, including renunciation, exile, or execution. In 1612, another mission led by a vassal of one of the lords traveled to Spain, meeting King Philip III and delivering a letter that proposed trade agreements. He also visited Pope Paul V in Rome. This envoy returned to Japan in 1620, but by then, news of the Tokugawa shogunate's crackdown on Christianity had reached Europe, stalling potential trade relations due to the shogunate's stringent policies. Interestingly, in the Spanish town of Coria del Rio, a stopping point for this mission, 600 residents bear the surnames Japon or Sapon as of 2021, believed to be descendants of samurai who settled there, as per local folklore. At the close of the Edo period, following the 1853 arrival of an American naval officer in Japan, which ended the country's policy of limited foreign contact, Japan initiated 6 diplomatic missions to the United States and Europe for negotiations. The most renowned of these was the 1860 mission to the US. Among the participants was Fukuzawa Yukichi, a pivotal figure in Japan's modernization efforts, whose contributions earned him the honor of appearing on the 10,000 yen note. The Tokugawa era's prolonged peace was disrupted by Commodore Matthew Perry's arrival with formidable U.S. Navy steamships in 1853. Utilizing his naval superiority, Perry coerced Japan into opening its ports for trade, a stark change from the previous policy that allowed only select harbor towns to engage in limited Western trade under strict shogunate supervision. This trading was strategically conducted, often playing Franciscan and Dominican interests against each other to acquire valuable arquebus technology, which significantly contributed to the decline of the traditional samurai warriors. Starting in 1854, Japan began modernizing its military forces. A naval academy was established in Nagasaki in 1855, initiating a trend of sending naval students abroad to Western countries for training, which cultivated a generation of foreign-educated leaders, including Admiral Enomoto. French naval engineers were employed to construct naval arsenals at Yokosuka and Nagasaki. By the end of the Tokugawa shogunate, the shogunal navy had acquired 8 Western-style steam warships, with these vessels playing a crucial role under the leadership of Admiral Enomoto Takeaki during the Boshin War against forces loyal to the emperor. Additionally, a French military mission was invited in 1867 to further modernize the shogun's armies. The final display of traditional samurai valor occurred in 1867 during the Boshin War, where forces from the Choshu and Satsuma provinces overcame the shogunate troops in support of restoring imperial governance. In the 1870s, samurai made up 5% of Japan's population, amounting to around 400,000 families with approximately 1.9 million individuals. By 1869, they were placed under direct national jurisdiction, and during the Meiji Revolution, no class felt the impact of change more profoundly. While many younger samurai played pivotal roles in the Meiji Restoration, their elders were seen as remnants of an outdated feudal system that dominated both military power and educational resources. A key objective for the Meiji government was the phased elimination of the samurai class, aiming to assimilate them into the broader Japanese professional, military, and business sectors. The samurai's traditional stipends were a significant financial burden on the state. In 1873, the government initiated the taxation of these stipends, eventually converting them into interest-bearing government bonds by 1879. This financial restructuring was designed to encourage former samurai to invest in land and industry. Adapting to the military standards of Western powers, Japan required a large conscript army, necessitating a departure from the samurai's autonomous command to strict adherence to a military chain of command. The samurai were reclassified as shizoku, a status that lasted until 1947, and were stripped of their rights to publicly wear the katana or execute disrespectful commoners. In 1877, a minor samurai-led rebellion was swiftly quelled. The era saw many younger samurai leveraging their literacy and education to study abroad. Upon returning, some founded private schools for higher education, while others became journalists, authors, or started newspaper companies. Many also transitioned into government roles. By the 1880s, former samurai constituted 23% of Japan's foremost businessmen, illustrating their successful integration into new societal roles. In a 16th century report sent to Father Ignatius Loyola in Rome, derived from the observations of anger, Xavier highlighted the Japanese culture's deep reverence for honor. Firstly, among all the recently discovered nations, none seem to possess as much natural virtue as the Japanese. I am convinced that among barbarous peoples, none display more inherent goodness. They are naturally kind, honest, and possess an intense desire for honor and social status. Above all, they hold honor in the highest regard. Despite the prevalence of poverty, being poor is not seen as shameful here. There is one aspect of their society that might be unique, as I am unsure if it exists among Christians. Regardless of their wealth, the nobles, even those who are poor, command the same respect as the wealthy. Xavier further comments, there is no nation in the world that fears death less. He continues to express his admiration for the Japanese's commitment to their honor, noting, I believe the Japanese to be the most conscientious about their honor of any people in the world. Xavier's time in Japan, from 1549 to 1551, was spent converting many of the Japanese to Christianity. In the 13th century, Hojo Shigetoki wrote, when one is serving officially or in the master's court, he should not think of 100 or 1,000 people, but he should consider only the importance of the master. Feudal lords, such as Shiba Yoshimasa, stated that a warrior looked forward to a glorious death in the service of a military leader or the emperor. It is a matter of regret to let the moment when one should die pass by. First, a man whose profession is the use of arms should think and then act upon not only his own fame, but also that of his descendants. He should not scandalize his name forever by holding his one and only life too dear. One's main purpose in throwing away his life is to do so either for the sake of the emperor or in some great undertaking of a military general. It is that exactly that will be the great fame of one's descendants. Tori Mototada, a feudal lord under Tokugawa Ieyasu, made a heroic stand on the eve of the Battle of Sekigahara. Knowing the strategic Fushimi castle was indefensible, he volunteered to defend it to allow his lord to advance eastward. Tori and Ieyasu both understood the fortress's fate, yet Tori pledged his loyalty by choosing to stay, committing himself and his men to fight to the bitter end. Embracing the samurai code, Tori swore he would not be captured alive. In a heroic last stand, he and his 2,000-man garrison faced overwhelming odds. Resisting Ishida Mitsunari's formidable force of 40,000 for 10 days. In a poignant final message to his son Tadamasa, he expressed his unwavering dedication and honor. He wrote, "It is not the way of the warrior to be shamed and avoid death even under circumstances that are not particularly important. It goes without saying that to sacrifice one's life for the sake of his master is an unchanging principle. That I should be able to go ahead of all the other warriors of this country and lay down my life for the sake of my master's benevolence is an honor to my family and has been my most fervent desire for many years." It is recounted that both Tori Mototada and Tokugawa Ieyasu shed tears upon their farewell, deeply aware that they would never meet again. The legacy of loyalty was strong in Torii's family, with his father and grandfather having served the Tokugawa, and his brother having fallen in battle. Torii's resolute defense significantly influenced the course of Japanese history. His sacrifice allowed Ieyasu Tokugawa the crucial time needed to rally an army, leading to a decisive victory at the Battle of Sekigahara. The philosophies of Confucianism, Buddhism, Zen, and to a lesser extent Shinto, deeply influenced samurai culture. Zen meditation was particularly valued as it provided a method for calming the mind, essential in the tumultuous life of a samurai. The Buddhist beliefs in reincarnation and rebirth encouraged samurai to eschew unnecessary violence and torture, with some even renouncing their warrior paths to become Buddhist monks upon realizing the fruitlessness of their violent actions. Tragically, some of these samurai faced death as they grappled with these moral insights on the battlefield. Confucianism played a pivotal role in shaping samurai ethics, particularly emphasizing the crucial lord-retainer relationship. It underscored the deep loyalty that a samurai was expected to dedicate to his lord, defining the core of samurai duty and honor. In historical Japan, literacy rates were exceptionally high among samurai, aristocrats, and priests, particularly in kanji, the system of writing derived from Chinese characters. Recent research suggests that literacy extended beyond these elite circles more broadly than previously thought. For instance, during the Kamakura period, many documents such as court filings and birth, death, and marriage records authored by farmers were written in kanji. Both literacy and mathematical abilities saw significant improvement towards the end of this period. Many samurai maintained a warrior library stocked with texts on strategy and the science of warfare, crucial for navigating the turbulent feudal era of Japan. Remarkably, some of these collections contained as many as 20,000 volumes. Similarly, the aristocracy often had family libraries that housed classics, Buddhist texts, family histories, and genealogical records, preserving their heritage and aiding in the education of future generations. The broader population, including commoners, also exhibited high levels of literacy. Feudal Lord Asakura Norikage remarked on the profound loyalty his father commanded, attributed significantly to the courteous correspondence he maintained not only with fellow samurai, but also with farmers and townsfolk. St. Francis Xavier, writing on January 29, 1552, noted the widespread literacy in Japan, which facilitated the understanding of prayers and religious teachings. In Japan, there are distinct forms of writing for men and women, and it is common for both genders, particularly among the nobility and the merchant class, to be well educated. Monks and nuns in monasteries often teach reading and writing to children, whereas the affluent and noble families prefer to hire private tutors for their offspring. The ability to read is widespread, greatly aiding in the comprehension of our prayers and the fundamental aspects of our faith. Samurai engaged in arranged marriages, typically orchestrated by a matchmaker of equal or higher social standing. For high-ranking samurai, such arrangements were crucial as they rarely had chances to meet potential wives, while for those of lower rank, it was more a matter of formality. Generally, samurai married within their class, but lower-ranked samurai were sometimes permitted to marry commoners. In these cases, the bride's dowry was used to establish the new household. Samurai were also allowed to take concubines, though their backgrounds were scrutinized by higher-ranking samurai. Often, having a concubine was considered comparable to a marriage. While popular stories sometimes depict the kidnapping of concubines, such acts were regarded as disgraceful or even illegal. If the concubine was a commoner, formal steps, including sending betrothal money or a tax exemption note, were taken to gain her parents' approval. Although not legally wed, being a samurai's concubine was seen by many as preferable to being a commoner's legal wife. Marriages between a merchant's daughter and a samurai often resulted in the erasure of the samurai's debts thanks to the bride's dowry, simultaneously elevating the social standing of the merchant's family. Sons born to a commoner concubine could inherit the samurai's social status. Divorce among samurai was possible but rare and required approval from a superior. Common reasons for divorce included the failure to produce a male heir. Though adopting a son could circumvent this issue, a samurai might seek a divorce for more personal reasons, such as not liking his wife, but this was generally avoided to prevent embarrassing the matchmaker. Women could initiate a divorce, but this typically resulted in the samurai formally divorcing her. Post-divorce, samurai were required to return the betrothal money, which acted as a deterrent to casual separation. The primary role of women in the samurai class was to manage the household, a responsibility that grew especially significant during the early feudal period in Japan. With their warrior husbands often away on campaigns or engaged in clan conflicts, these women, referred to as okugata-sama, meaning one who remains in the home, were tasked with overseeing all domestic affairs, caring for children, and sometimes even defending the home. Consequently, many samurai women were trained to handle a polearm for protection of their family and home if necessary. Although some women fought in battles alongside male samurai, they were not typically recognized as formal samurai. For a samurai's daughter, a key responsibility was entering into a politically strategic marriage. These women often married into rival clans to secure diplomatic ties, setting the stage for numerous historical intrigues, conflicts, and tragedies. A woman had the right to divorce her husband if he mistreated her or betrayed her family. A notable instance involved Oda Tokuhime, who managed to have her troublesome mother-in-law arrested for allegedly conspiring with a rival clan. Samurai society prized traits such as humility, obedience, self-control, strength, and loyalty in women. A samurai's wife was expected to be proficient in managing property, maintaining records, handling finances, educating children, and caring for elderly relatives. Under Confucian laws, which dictated the moral code and personal relationships of the samurai, a woman had to demonstrate subservience to her husband, filial piety to her parents, and attentiveness to her children. Excessive affection was discouraged as it was believed to spoil the children, requiring a mother to also enforce discipline. While women from wealthier samurai families enjoyed certain privileges and were spared the manual labor that burdened lower-class women, they remained significantly subordinate to men and generally excluded from political roles or leading their households. However, this did not mean that samurai women were entirely powerless. Throughout history, several women from the samurai class managed to wield significant political influence, sometimes wisely, other times not, despite the legal limitations placed upon them. Yamauchi Chiyo, the wife of Yamauchi Kazutoyo, is often celebrated as the paragon of a samurai wife. Legend has it that she crafted her own kimono from scraps of old fabric and meticulously saved enough money to buy her husband a splendid horse that carried him to numerous triumphs. Her revered status, especially noted for her financial prudence, is particularly noteworthy considering she did not produce an heir, and the Yamauchi clan was eventually succeeded by Kazutoyo's younger brother. This suggests that samurai wives often managed the family finances, which could have been a significant source of their influence. During the Tokugawa period, the importance of education grew, and the schooling of young girls became increasingly valued by families and society at large. Intelligence and education became as important as physical attractiveness in marriage prospects. While many educational texts for women focused on their roles as wives and household managers, a number of them also engaged with reading and even delved into philosophical and literary classics. By the end of the Tokugawa period, literacy was nearly universal among women of the samurai class. Throughout the era of the samurai, two distinct types of military organization prevailed. Initially, during the Nara period, the samurai armies were structured around Chinese-style recruited forces, evolving later to include infantry units made up primarily of ashigaru, or foot soldiers. Conversely, another form of organization involved samurai fighting as cavalry, either individually or in small groups. At the onset of battle, bulbous-headed arrows would be launched, their buzzing sound intended to summon the kami to witness the acts of bravery about to take place. This was followed by a brief exchange of arrows, setting the stage for a confrontation known as ikiuchi, where prominent warriors from each side engaged in personal combat. These individual duels would then give way to larger conflicts, typically involving infantry led by mounted samurai. Initially, it was considered a great honor to be the first to charge into battle, a sentiment that shifted during the Sengoku period with the advent of the arquebus. The introduction of firearms changed combat tactics. Initially, opposing forces would exchange gunfire from around 100 meters apart. When strategically advantageous, ashigaru spearmen would advance, followed by a samurai charge, either mounted or on foot. In the midst of battle, it was not uncommon for some samurai to dismount and strive to decapitate a notable enemy, viewing this act as a highly honorable feat that earned them respect among their peers. Following the battle, high-ranking samurai often partook in a tea ceremony to celebrate victory, and the victorious general would inspect the severed heads of key opponents. However, not all battles unfolded in such a structured manner. Many conflicts were decided by surprise tactics, including night raids or setting fires. The legendary samurai Minamoto no Tametomo remarked, "According to my experience, there is nothing more advantageous when it comes to crushing the enemy than a night attack. If we set fire to 3 of the sides and close the passage through the room, those who flee from the flames will be shot down by arrows, and those who seek to escape from them will not be able to flee from the flames." Taking the head of a formidable opponent on the battlefield was considered a significant honor and brought substantial recognition. There was a meticulous ritual involved in preparing the severed heads. They were first washed and combed, and then the teeth were blackened using a dye. This was done because white teeth were seen as a mark of distinction, and blackening them was viewed as an act of desecration. The heads were then carefully displayed on a table for public viewing. In 1600, during the Battle of Sekigahara, Kani Saizo distinguished himself at the skirmish at Gifu Castle by claiming the heads of 17 enemy combatants, earning high commendation from the shogun. Known for his unique method of battlefield recognition, he carried a bamboo stalk on his back and marked his fallen enemies by placing bamboo leaves in the necks or mouths of the severed heads. Since it was impractical to carry each one, this practice earned him the moniker Bamboo Saizo. During Toyotomi Hideyoshi's military campaigns in Korea, the practice of sending severed heads back to Japan became so burdensome due to their number that only the noses were preserved and sent instead. These noses were salted and transported in wooden barrels. The barrels were then interred in a mound near Hideyoshi's Great Buddha, known today by the misnomer Mimizuka, which translates to ear mound. Most samurai adhered to a strict code of honor and were expected to be role models for those beneath them. A significant aspect of their code was seppuku or harakiri, which provided a way for a disgraced samurai to restore his honor through death, a state where they remained subject to societal norms. While many portrayals of samurai are heavily romanticized, research suggests that samurai were as pragmatic on the battlefield as any other soldiers. The term bushido is sometimes contested by scholars when used broadly or without reference to an individual samurai's interpretation due to its evolving and expansive definition over time. Despite idealized perceptions prevalent in the 20th century, samurai displayed a range of behaviors. They could be disloyal, treacherous, cowardly, valiant, or excessively faithful. Typically, samurai were loyal to their direct superiors, who themselves were aligned with higher lords. Allegiances among these higher lords could fluctuate. For instance, lords who initially aligned with Toyotomi Hideyoshi might later shift their allegiance to Tokugawa, bringing their samurai along. There were notable cases where samurai would betray their lord if they believed their loyalty to the emperor took precedence. As we close this chapter on the complex and captivating history of the samurai, we're reminded of the profound legacy that these warriors left behind, woven deeply into the fabric of Japanese culture. From their strict code of honor to the dynamic loyalties that shaped the nation, the samurai era offers endless lessons on bravery, strategy, and adaptation. Did any story stand out to you today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to catch more fascinating stories from history. Join us next time as we unravel another intriguing chapter from the past.